another episode of A Podcast Canada. Your host Stephen Maxit here, and we have Mike, pardon me, Carnevale, sales trainer, and Evolve performance coach. And Mike, we just spent, you know, personally the last few weeks working together and talking about some sales training. Just to give some context here, we had myself and my team on with you. Full disclosure to listener. So we've done some work together there. We had a great time and experience working with Mike and his team and what they're bringing to market here. Um, and yeah, I don't wreck my whole testimonial for you either, but we'll get into kind of what you offer here. And I think ultimately, though, it's a really great, for me anyways, it was a great refresher on, sales and really sharpening that saw and tool. And I know we had a mix of folks in our group there recently. But whatever you like to share, I guess, is kind of like an opener here, Mike. But I'm sure it's mostly about the sales training side of things,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
how
So,
you're.
there's a backstory there with me, losing my gym during 2020. For the listeners, I had a brick and mortar business in 2020. It was a gym. And between gyms and restaurants, those businesses took a pretty bad beating during the pandemic, right? And when
Yep.
I lost that business, I went through just this growth process, and I was looking for help, and I didn't know exactly what help I needed, and I didn't exactly know who I needed help from. So I'm reaching out to all these different coaches. And in hindsight, what I really needed, Stephen, is I needed a coach to guide me through a sales process and get me some help. And I'm hopping on Zoom call after Zoom call, and none of them really had any skills in sales. So when it came time to launching a business, and when it came time for me to step into my calling as a sales trainer, it felt like a natural fit to niche down on coaches, because I feel as though, coaches have the ability to transform lives and help people. But I oftentimes find that some of the best coaches are some of the weakest in sales. And then maybe
Right.
some not so good coaches are actually phenomenal in sales. So I feel like this is something that I can bring to play, where I can
Right.
help people and help businesses grow.
Absolutely. Well, I think you did. You're doing a great job at it. I mean, we had a few coaches within our uh, cohort, our class, if you will, for there, and I know that. I mean, what we went through there with you was very specific to what would we go through? 9 different modules, 8 different modules? Or
Yeah,
what?
so it's a 21-day sprint with 9 modules, and
Yeah,
very specific on how to create leads, and then get these leads closed so we can make money. Because at the end of the day, Stephen, our businesses need income to survive, and
yeah,
the better we are at the point of sale, the more predictable and consistent our financial wins can come.
right. And then along with that, hopefully services and products can become more consistent. You can make improvements within your business too. It just adds to a healthier business overall.
Yeah, for sure. The more money we make in a perfect world, right? We can take that money and we can put it back into the fulfillment process. We can put that back into product development. Another thing I see in the coaching industry, I don't think there's much of an emphasis on that. A lot of times I see some young coaches make money, and then they take that money and they put it back into more client
Right.
acquisition instead of the fulfillment process. So I think that's something that could use a little bit of intention moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. What was and I think it's a really important thing to mention, like the beginning part of the story, and without getting too in the weeds about like my history too on different work things. But I think until you hit a bit of a rough patch, you don't really appreciate that growth and that trajectory. I think it definitely helps um, guide a little bit more within that. And I think it's a lot of folks we do chat with have gone through different situations that have, basically failures, whether
Oh,
they was intentional or not, and things happen. And, not to get, like I said, to get on the weeds on that storyline for you, but I think it's just
we
so
can
important
if
to
you'd like.
highlight.
We can if you'd like, if you're open for that. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and do it. So,
Yeah.
um, losing my business in 2020 was both very, very controversial, and it was very painful. For a
Yeah.
little bit of backstory, guys, I owned a gym in Broward County that's in Florida. And my
Yeah.
local government had actually, they were making some mandates that I thought were unfair. but I was going along with it, just seeing where it went, seeing what was going to happen. Uh, but the more that I continued to kind of go along with it, Stephen, the more bizarre the mandates seem to have gotten. And
Right.
I drew a hard line in the sand for the health of my community when Broward County had mandated masks while working out. I thought it was just, first of all, a logical and operational impossibility to enforce. I ran a 24-hour gym. It was 18,000 square feet. So there
That's
was
a big
no,
gym.
yeah, there was no way for me to even enforce it, right? But then,
Yeah.
on the health side of things, covering your breathing holes, it just felt like a total. It felt like a total slap in the face of what I thought health and wellness was. Now, keep in mind, Stephen, this is before all the science has come out saying that they didn't work the way we thought they did. So I had to
Right.
play it pretty carefully, but I didn't enforce the mandates. I got in a little bit of legal trouble. I had actually been arrested at a point. My wife was too. And I lost that business and I went through a very, very trying time
Mhm.
because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, Stephen, maybe you can relate to this. I think a lot of times our identities and our egos can get wrapped up in whatever thing we're doing, right? Whatever
Totally.
project we're working on. So when I
Yeah.
had that taken away from me in a way that I felt was very unceremonious, it shook me to my core. It was just an external that just shook me so deeply, and that began a process of self discovery. That began a process of
Totally.
healing, and it was the hardest thing, and it remains the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's put me on a lifelong journey of what I would describe as self mastery.
That is so cool. I mean, it's neat to hear you talk like about it now because I remember we had similar things in Canada where well, just like every thank goodness I had a home gym. Frankly, like in that situation because I've been training for like tries and I remember I'd signed up for a couple Ironmans at the time and then all that like training and momentum kind of got because we couldn't go swimming in a pool. Obviously, the whole covering your mouth thing wasn't going to work swimming at all,
Right.
right? But so that was just like totally kiboshed right there.
Yeah.
I remember like feeling it for these businesses too, because yeah, you're going to like a restaurant, gym, all these things are just like taken away, and then it's a lot of, and I'm sure you were, empathetic towards people that wanted to come work out too, right? You get attached to your clientele at the time. You want to do what's best for them, and like what you said, they're good for their health. But ultimately, like
Yeah.
getting to the point where you just so nicely kind of like recapped it there to say like now the move forward is this. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, right? Regardless of what the thing was where you hit the pavement, scraped the knee, knocked out the teeth, whatever it was. But then that move forward now, like your plan moving that way just sounds so great and you're dialed in there and focused on helping coaches get better and like just in such a specific way. So that's a great share, Mike. I appreciate you doing that on here. And it's it's kind of like what they say, like the windshield's bigger than the rear view. But don't forget what's behind you kind of thing there. And I think
Yeah,
it's
I was
exactly what you're
actually
doing.
just that's a great way to put it. We have to look forward and we have to have a vision for our future while living in the moment. But
Yeah.
at the same time, we can't live in the past. But there's just so much context there, and as I like to call it,
Yeah.
replaying the tape, so to speak. If we can replay the tape of things that we've done, and we can really kind of analyze our behaviors and what drove us to come to those decisions, I think it's helpful as long as we don't get like sucked deep into it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Stuck
so
in
we
that.
kind of have to look
Yeah.
back. We have to look forward.
100%. It's good to reflect, but then also, yeah, have that point of um move forward. I mean, that goes kind of like on a deeper like psychology level too for a minute, if I may, or like survival skills. I've heard this, and I got talking about it on another call recently too about how we inherit some of survival things come genetically to us. I don't know. This is a random tangent I know not enough about, but it became interesting to me to like consider that you might inherit some genes that because of different like anxieties and stuff might have come from someone that was in war in your family history, right? And if they had kids and stuff like that, that stuff all like trickles down, and those instincts don't really leave you. It's what keeps us kind of on our toes, as it were. And I mean, if we can relate that back to business here, we develop instincts, I think, because of some of the things that happen to us, right? You just get better at it as the journey's going, right? Like not going to make that mistake again. To some of the points that we reflected on in the training too, full circle here. In terms of talking with direct questions focusing on like some scripting and practicing is just so useful. Because if you don't practice it, you're not going to get better at it, just like a sport. And something that we had talked about too was um, you don't see anyone going to the Olympics without a coach. That's just not the thing, right? And it really got me thinking. I saw that halfway through our training. You didn't push that on me whatsoever. I saw it on like an online thing, and I was just like, huh, that's like that is really true. It's a very useful thing. Maybe you need a couple coaches along the way, right? Different
Yeah.
coaches. And I know you do a lot of training
I do a lot
yourself.
of training, and I have multiple coaches, and there's different types of coaches out there. This is my perspective on coaching. So I think there's two different types of coaches you can hire. You can hire a coach that has a specific skill or characteristic trait that you are looking to develop. And then you can hire that coach for that specific skill. But then there's also a coach that is more in the mentorship side of things. And that coach sits in the seat that you want to sit in. And very frequently, in my opinion, those two coaches are not the same people. Those two coaches are not the same people. So, there's the mentorship, like, hey, I want to work deeper into the network of Bedros Keuilian. I want to get in closer with, my original mentor, David Meltzer, because they sit in positions of authority where they are making a great impact on their communities with that authority. But then at the same time, if there's a specific skill that I want to learn about marketing per se, I'll go to a guy, Steven, that is like, niche down into marketing because it just makes more sense to go that route. So there's different ways you can look at it, but I truly do believe that having someone to hold you accountable and to teach you specific skills is key.
100%. And I think, something that we had chatted about a little bit within my own team and starting to like expand and fill those niches and areas where like you're good, but you're maybe not the best. You can get people to work with you on your team that can help. I think it's like one and the same, almost like coaches are at one level helping you and then you're helping other folks within there. But it's almost better to go like so specific on those things and almost treat it like in a very basic way, but that it's like the McDonald's lineup style thing, right? Someone's doing fries, someone's doing something else.
Yeah.
If you stretch that into your business and make that a reality, like for what we do on the podcast, just like mentioned, but we have a smaller team right now, but as we're growing and we're trying to really keep everyone, very focused on the area that they're really good at, not trying to stretch them. That's a challenge because then it's like, you have this new thing that kind of comes in the picture and you're like, okay, is this an area, we're going to need someone else to add in because then that changes the dynamic too. But
I think startups are messy. Because things change in a startup so quickly, right? And your team could remain the same. You could have the same core group of people that have the, developing skill sets. You'd like to hope and think that people are doing their personal development. But as you grow in your top line revenue and, the business continues to progress, people within the company are going to be taking on more clearly defined roles. Whereas in the early going, it's like, hey,
you're just like this. Yeah. you're filling all these tasks
on revenue. Like, and again, I'm really big on like, let's just grow the top end revenue. And then the back stuff will figure itself out as long as we're, attentive to it.
Well, it's something that we hadn't really dove down the path of, but it sits heavy with me. Someone who I would consider a mentor who I actually work with now. We help run his marketing on the fractional marketing side of things, but he started recommending books to me. We've kind of known each other for a number of years, and it's become both like a good friend and like ally in the workspace. It's a unique relationship for sure. And he recommended this book to me. 10x is easier than 2. He actually literally gave it to me. He had like a box of them. He's like, "Here, have this book." Now that I'm thinking of it, have you read that one, Mike? I don't mean to.
No, I've heard of it. I've heard of it, and I agree with the concept. I think thinking bigger oftentimes is easier. And a lot of times with the scarcity mindset, we can say like, well, if we just play small, it's going to be easier to get there, when that's not always the case.
There's someone so specifically I just heard talk about, I can't remember their last name. She's actually like a shark on like Shark Tank, which is Canada's like pitch thing or whatever. You're familiar with it?
Great show.
Yeah. And Barbara, I forget the last name now.
She's phenomenal.
she's
She's great.
yeah, whatever her last name is. Sorry about that, Barbara. Big fan, by the way. But there's she talks about investing in real estate. She always says like um, or she recently said, it was talking about like investing, it was always worth it to buy the way better property. Like if it was in a good location and a good property, it was worth it to basically play big at a bigger level there than play small and get stuck in like that, like fixer upper stage.
Yeah.
That's how I interpret it anyways. And it just really got me thinking because you're right, like in a space where the real estate could be growing, if it grows by a lot, you're looking at a way bigger gain than that small win for basically the same amount of effort if you can afford it. If it's not going to make you totally broke and stuff. And I just think that's so
Let's
relatable.
sticking on the topic of real estate. Let's do it this way, right? Let's say that you're a real estate agent and you're in between a buyer and a seller, and you're selling, say, like a $3
Yeah,
million home. If something happens within that $3 million transaction, say a $10,000 fix, a $20,000 fix, it's very easy for the buyer and the seller to say, hey, look, in good faith, let's split this down the middle. I didn't know. Let's make it happen.
totally.
Well, I think splitting it down the middle isn't fair. Let's go 75-25. And it's easy to make that deal happen. Whereas, if you're in the middle of a buyer and a seller in a $150,000 fixer upper, if something goes wrong within that deal, there's just not a lot of wiggle room where, a
Yeah,
$10,000 problem could blow the whole deal because the seller could say, listen, I literally want to do it, but I can't.
like, yeah,
So, and the buyer
100%.
can say, listen, my lender won't budge and I don't have the money, and not even for a hard head. It's just the deal gets killed. So I think in business, it's the same way. Bigger numbers, oftentimes, if being run properly, could be easier.
100%. Yeah, I think that was a great recap too. We just randomly went down that path. That was so
Yeah.
good. Speaking of not having scripts, we kind of did write one in general for the show, and it's funny how we went through that process too. But I think it is so important to like back to that point of what you're training with is to have that like baseline really nailed down. For folks to reference and stuff. I don't think we think about it enough. Oftentimes it's not discussed. But yeah, it's just interesting to think at a bigger scale, and I think traveling helps with that a lot. You get to go different places, see different things, expose your mind to different stuff. I find people who don't travel as much sometimes are limited in their thought process, right? They're seeing the same things day in and day out. There's not a lot of creativity that can come from that, or they haven't been exposed to different things. It could be a limiting factor, right? Just for what they're used to seeing and being around.
100%. I think your comfort zone is where your dreams go to die. I think that you have to expand your comfort zone all the time. Um,
Yeah,
if that's traveling, if that's new business ventures, getting around new people, doing things physically with your body. I'm a big believer, Stephen, that
yes,
the next shift in our lives could likely come from something that we do with our bodies. And as long as we're
yep.
not hurting ourselves or taking it too extreme, I think that it's a good thing to challenge ourselves physically.
100. I'm glad that you brought this up too. I know it's something you're passionate about, obviously, with previously being in the gym business and fitness and helping folks achieve those goals that way, or at least giving them access to that. And I know that you do some cold plunges and some other things that I kind of like dabble in. I'm not maybe as dedicated in my process other than going to the gym, and cycling is certainly something that try to
Yeah,
keep in the routine. But what does your routine look like, and what's something that's coming up for you that you're trying new? I know that there's one obvious thing that I hope you dive in here, but
yeah.
um, yeah. So what's going on there, Mike, for your routine?
So I'll start with my morning routine. So I think that it's a work in progress, like a lot of things in my life. My morning routine will look something like this. I'll wake up at 4:59 a.m. I don't hit the snooze button ever. It's non-negotiable. I'll take a
Yeah.
screenshot. I'll take a screenshot of what time I woke up for accountability to myself. I turn my air conditioning down. I'll turn the heat up. I drink 36 ounces of water. I'll begin a 10-minute meditation breathing process. I'll then read between 10 and 30 pages of a book. I'll journal for 10 minutes. And then I'll usually get right into the hardest thing of the day. So once I've gotten up, once I've hydrated, once I've cleared out any negative thoughts that could be in the subconscious mind,
Yeah.
I'll then do a little bit of studying, not anything crazy, 10 to 30 pages of a book. That book could be on anything self-mastery. It could be on something broad or specific. Then I'll journal my thoughts just to get anything out of the mind that I felt like I was holding on to. And then I just get right to marketing. I get right to marketing my business. I don't
Right.
exactly relish the process of what I'm doing right now to market my business. It's very much so a modern day version of door knocking, if you will, Stephen. But if I can do that right away when I'm at my highest frequency, what I find is that not only are the results better, but it also sets me up later on in the day.
100%. Well, it's a great start and routine just to kind of get yourself. I've done different routines over the years, and I'm trying a couple different things coming up here, just to kind of push it. But I think starting off the day with getting active, and being physical is kind of a non-negotiable. You just
Yeah,
perform better. You get the blood going. You're moving your body around a little bit, and I don't know what time you get. I know there's kind of like the debate, like you don't have to get up at 5 a.m. to be
yeah.
successful and stuff.
You
But
don't.
I
You
think
don't.
yeah, and I mean, some days um, will sleep in a little bit more. Usually, though, I'm up at like 6 most days, and then it's like, hey, go do this thing. I found if I push the physical a little bit harder, like longer, like if I'll do something for an hour and then do another thing for another 45 minutes to an hour in the morning, and then have like just a very calm everything body wise. That's that kind of taken care of, if you will, for the day. If not, then I'll do one like later in the day to kind of have second session. But yeah, and then a little bit of reading, and then I get into the day after I've kind of had a couple of thoughts. Not as much as like these things are the killers of popping on first thing. It's a
Yep.
struggle not to,
Yeah.
but if I can get on there, maybe read a couple of things, and then I'm putting on music and or a podcast, and then I'm hitting either the bike or the gym, and then that's the routine. But have you seen you've probably seen this because you're like me, you're exploring different things to push, but we're both doing like a little bit of ice bathing and stuff. But the whole taping of the mouth thing for sleeping and really focusing on like nose breathing is something that's like been brought up more recently. And I think I might actually have to shave the beard off to do the proper taping, but it's something I kind of want to explore. It forces you to breathe through your nose at night, but I've been doing kind of like the breathe right strips to just start it off. And I've noticed like a bit of a difference there already, just for being more relaxed. It's supposed to help your teeth and other stuff too, but random.
No, I've heard good things about it. I've never done it. I think it could be useful. Just the breath is so important, and I think
Yeah,
anything we can do to help our capacity to get oxygen to our lungs and to our bodies, I think that's beneficial.
yeah,
I heard you bring up the ice bath. I'm a big fan. I know it's a fad. It'll be in and out. Um,
yeah,
but I do think that your body's in a healing state at a certain point. I also believe that point can come and go pretty quickly, into which case now you're in a emotional discipline stage of the ice bath where
totally.
you're now going from, okay, my body has spent 3 minutes in the cold, I've gotten the physical benefits, to now you're in a situation where you're dealing with the emotional discipline. And emotional mastery and emotional discipline is something that I've been exploring recently. And I never quite understood it before. But
Right.
for the people watching, emotional mastery or emotional discipline, I can best describe it in this way. We all have two different voices. We have the inner advocate, and then we have the inner critic. And a lot of times we're not even really consciously aware of that. But those two voices exist.
Hmm.
And when we put ourselves through manufactured hardships,
Yeah,
self self created hardships, we can actually start to like take a temperature check on which voice is louder. And Stephen, what I found is that when that inner advocate is louder, your behavior is going to go more towards where your higher self would want to go. Whereas when that inner critic is loud, that's when we're tapping out of that last rep when we're working out. That's when we're jumping out of the ice plunge saying, you know what, tomorrow's another day. That's when
yeah,
we're stopping what we're doing, and we're saying, we're negotiating with ourselves at that point. And recently I've been discovering things that I can do to listen to which voice is louder, right? Who's louder today? Is it the inner advocate or is it the inner critic? And then to take it a step further, what can I do to silence the inner critic? What action steps can I take to make that inner advocate shine through on a louder level?
100%. Yeah, I think that's a very common debate within business owners and coaches though too, is that like if you are working basically alone, or even if you have a team and you're leading it, it's important to be strong and good, up here as best as you can and as much as you can invest in yourself. I think it's a no-brainer to do more things, like either coaching to any degree, whether that be for your physical health or for sales training or otherwise. It's kind of a non, why would you not? You'd be crazy. I don't know. It's just totally shifted for me in the last uh, few months in terms of thinking about that and not really holding back on, going down that path of, is this going to be helpful? And if the answer is yes, then, look at the price tag on it maybe a little bit, not be totally ignorant. It's not like there's an endless budget on my end on that and things, but it's like, like, can it be afforded? And like, okay, great. And next, once a quarter, there'll be a big thing that, for this year for me anyways, that I'll be doing, whether that be going to a networking event to, expand network, meeting folks or be around other speakers, things like that, or getting a coach to help on a specific thing that you want to improve in, because you can do it. Anyone can go and improve in these areas. It's just dedicating the time to do it. And if you can, afford the time and energy to pay a coach to help you do it, then awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Along the
I think
way.
as long as we're surrounding ourselves with the right people. I think unfortunately it's an unregulated business, Stephen. So there's
Yeah,
a lot of people out there that could tell you that they could achieve something or they could help you achieve something when in fact they can't. And I think
right.
that can create skepticism within the marketplace. But I want to say this to your viewers on the whole. I think a lot of times when we're looking at the price tag of personal development, I think a lot of times we think to ourselves, what is this going to cost me in the short term? But what we
Right.
typically don't ask ourselves is, what is this going to cost me if I don't do this?
100%.
And if it's a good, strong program, if it's a tangible result, I think that it's a fair question to ask. I think it's a very, very fair question to ask.
Yeah, no, I think, well, it's definitely easy, relatable, for the topics that we are talking about before of importance and that being, wealth, health. I don't know if what the other ones it's
Relationships are very, very big,
relationships.
very,
Yeah.
very complicated issues.
Hmm.
Life is all about relationships.
Yeah.
The problem of love, the problem of sex. I mean, these are like complicated, deep issues that they
Yep.
do not come factory installed within us.
Now, and everyone's had different experiences from, usually we were learning from our parents or people that are around us, right, and close in terms of like managing those relationships. It's funny, we kind of just like brought that up though lately here. I'm super down to like talk about this for a sec, but I was just saying to a friend of mine who's having an issue, and I was just like, it's interesting because like no two people have had the same experiences in that aspect. Even within your own family, your siblings are of different ages, and they would have seen it in a different way. So really, obviously, we're all individuals, but there's just such a different like standard for either hearing like parents discuss different things. Finances is often one that's tricky to understand how to have different dialogue on, because we don't always talk, or some people don't always like talk about that as openly, and it can be a big stressor within a business or a relationship, and or how you're managing those. That was that person's question, or we were just chatting through how they would get through it, and I was like fascinated with thinking about how they thought about it versus how I
Yeah,
would have thought about that situation, and I didn't think it was. I'm glad that they called. I think my answer was pretty short, sweet to the point. I was just like, oh, just chat through it. I don't know what's the worst of it. If you don't talk about it, it probably gets worse.
I
On that side
agree.
of things for them, right? So,
I
but
agree. And like I think we were pretty much going down the road of beliefs. I think that
yeah,
the conduct that we engage in, the behaviors that we engage in, when we take an action and then society gives us feedback on it, the way
yeah,
we interpret that feedback will very much so impact the way we perceive those events moving forward. And I think
totally.
as humans, it's up to us to say, is that belief actually the truth? Or was that just a one-off circumstance? Or is that just a one-off scenario? So
Right.
the way
Because if
we
you,
perceive the feedback is
yeah,
important.
Totally. Really exactly what you said there. Is it like is it a one-off, or is that now a pattern to follow? Kind of like
Right.
we were saying before about things that you can inherit, because like if that's like a thing on your inheritedness that you were just like stuck in, maybe it's actually not correct and that was like a one-off thing that now you're kind of like reactive to in a way, or you have a certain reaction to it, but maybe it was a one out of 1,000 things that you went through, and over time it'll maybe be less of a thing to get through. But
And we have to ask ourselves those questions. Like you buy a $3,500 car, you drive it off the lot, and the thing breaks down. Are all used car salesmen bad people,
right,
or was that just not a good used automobile, right? And
yeah,
it's fair to ask ourselves, what is the objective truth?
yep,
What is
100%,
the objective truth, right? So, and I think
yeah,
that going back in time and just saying like, maybe I need to like take a new meaning from that experience. You know what I mean? Maybe the guy really
yep,
had no idea. Maybe no one knew, and it just literally just broke 10 miles later. Who knows, right? You never know. So
yeah. And then you try to draw from that the positives, and then what you would do next time, right? Like, are you going to ask more questions, buy the warranty, which is always like the thing that you see on there with little like electronic things nowadays, right? It's like, hey, do you want to add the warranty for check the box, whatever? That's always a tough thing to know with what to do, but we make those decisions on experiences from the past or what someone told us to do, like you said, to kind of outside influence in, and
yeah,
beliefs, back to beliefs about, yeah, what how deep does that really uh, ride for our truth moving forward, kind of thing. So
learn sales, grow your top end revenue, and then buy a new car, finance it,
yes.
right? Now we have different problems, but at least we're not dealing with the scarcity of the other end. So
Yep, very true. And what hit Mike, something that I just chatted about, and I see it behind you. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm sure this is going to be an easy one to go on. There's some books behind you, so I'll warm up with that, and I'll keep chatting on my end here. But
yeah,
I know that there's a couple books that I've already read this year, and I have a couple favorites that I have gone back and read again or parts again. And I used to be very gentle with my books in terms of like not folding pages or writing, and now I've almost gone the opposite, and I will kind of abuse my, like, I don't lend out books. They're important to me, and I'll like fold a page over, I write my highlight them, I do all this stuff. But um is there any books that you've read recently or that you've read in the past that stick out for you in the business side of things? And like I said, I
yeah,
don't even put you
yeah.
down
I'm,
on
I'm
the spot
glad.
there,
I'm
so I
glad
didn't
you
give you a heads
asked
up on
that.
this one at all.
No, no, you're good, and it's
Yeah,
better. It's better that you didn't, to be honest. I really like Patrick Bet David's book. Um, his most recent one is good. Choose Your Enemies Wisely. That's a great book, because it gets
yeah,
us away. It gets us away from the idea that we have to love everyone and we have to like accept everyone, and it puts us in a mindset of it's okay to have an enemy, and it's okay to let that enemy fuel you to do positive things and to do negative things. So you're actually taking a negative emotion and you're actually using
sure.
it to go to the light. That's a fantastic book. But a book that I thought was even better by Patrick Bet David was Your Next Five Moves.
Oh,
Have you read?
yeah, I have. I didn't realize that that was the author. I'm opening this question up, and I'm not I haven't memorized a lot of the authors. There's a couple that I go to, and I actually recommended that particular book, The Next Five Moves, to someone else that had recommended me a book, and they had actually gifted me this book, and in return, I was like, you should read this book, and then without missing a beat, I'm like, wait, I'll just send it to you, because you got me a book with your little swap there. I sent him that read, and he thoroughly enjoyed it as well. He runs a business. We do some work together to this day. And that one, I really enjoyed that one. It's
I've read it
fantastic.
twice. I'll probably read it. I'll probably read it 10 times. I mean,
Yeah,
the way Your Next Five Moves by Patrick Bet David, the way it almost just expands your bandwidth to process future events, that
yep,
actually changes what we do in the moment. Because I often think, Stephen, that as entrepreneurs, we have to be outcome driven. We have to go into circumstances
100%.
and say, this is what I want to achieve, because when you know what you want as an outcome, you can actually reverse engineer the steps that you're going to take to get there. So
Yes.
having an outcome first and foremost,
Yeah.
but the more moves and the more months and years we can process those problems, I think the better we can be strategically on achieving that outcome efficiently.
Absolutely. You know what this draws me back to thinking about, Mike, is the idea of how sometimes I love playing different board games. Gets me thinking creatively, and then I actually started to kind of like reverse this in terms of like how I think about it. It took me a little while, and this has started almost a couple of years ago now on my journey. But how you think of like a board game in terms of, you know, that there's a set target of points you're trying to accumulate usually, or whatever the win is, beat the other players out and stuff. And I don't think we think about life enough like a board game in some ways. Not to make it so simple and make it seem like it's all in control, because in life
Yeah.
there's so many other variables and stuff. But you know, if you go back to thinking about that, and if people were to set their goal with a certain level, the same way that board game is set up to control us to have the same general goal in mind that way, I think we could like see some major, because I think it applies exactly to that book too, in a bit of a stretch of a way. But
No, for sure. And I don't think even as much of a stretch as people might even think. Like the game of chess
yeah,
is
exactly.
a very, very it's hard to put into words. I feel like the game of chess is very much so life. But then even more on like a family game, like a board game, like um,
Yeah,
what you would learn about negotiations, what you would learn about
100%.
in Monopoly, right? In the game of
That's
Monopoly.
what I was thinking of. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
So there's definitely a lot of parallels that can be drawn to some of the more popular games to life as well too.
yeah. And I think just having that goal set, and then like you said, recreating that backwards and figuring out, okay, I'm gonna have to do this to get to this point. And I think that there are some things that you'll find a lot of patterns, although it's not perfect. Like I just mentioned, the whole like waking up at 5 a.m. thing that sometimes gets, you know, bang, you know, everyone's saying it online. Oh, I gotta put, you know, five, this crazy routine. It's not really like that, but whatever your routine is, I think you got to stick to that. And then it comes down to both like the length of time and then overall like risk tolerance within your business. And you need to understand it's not going to happen overnight. Like what we see online is often the overnight situation. You're seeing that like that person's 9 months before work, you know, on that project, or maybe a year and a
Yeah.
half is really what we're like liking and sharing of those big viewpoints on there over time. But
Yeah, I think
like
social
that.
media. I think social media can kind of skew our perception of how long and how much money and how hard it is to become successful. Because you'll
Yeah,
you'll see someone come out of nowhere overnight, and in your mind, you're like, "Well, man, that guy came out of nowhere, and now he gets millions and millions and millions of hits." But what they
right,
don't see is the sleepless nights. What they don't see is delayed gratification, the grit, the determination, and all those other things like that. Um, like
yeah,
how many opportunities did that person pass up to create the bandwidth to continue to move forward for his vision? And then one day it just catches overnight. You get that phone
totally.
call and everything changes.
Yeah. And with that momentum too, I mean, from whatever you're doing and pushing forward, eventually you will start to accumulate some momentum within your project, as long as it's not totally a dud. I'm not saying that every idea is good either, because I
Yeah.
think some people within business communities do push people to be like, oh, that's a great idea, just to have folks be around that space. Sometimes it can happen. I've seen it kind of happen. But
I'm
you
a
know, I
big
think
believer. I'm a big believer in of remaining within a certain space and just being patient because I've made the
for a
mistake in
period
the
of time,
past.
yeah,
I've made the mistake of being like, well, this could be a better idea. Well, this could be a better idea. When in reality, it's like
right,
what you need to do is just get really, really, really good at whatever you have chosen and make sure what you've chosen is something that can provide a lot of value in the marketplace. Like you're in marketing and
really,
I'm in sales.
yeah,
I wish I could go back and talk to myself from 10 years ago because in marketing and sales, we don't need to wonder if we're in a good space. We don't need to
right,
wonder like is this really like a good field to be in? There's so many other things you could be doing that like it is an innovation that we just don't know if it's going to take off. Sales and marketing is like, hey, direct impact on revenue creation, wealth creation. If I could just become the best at this, in 36 months, I could literally go and do whatever I want. I could have the finances to do whatever I want. I could have the authority and
100%,
the credibility to go and do whatever I want. But keeping the idea fairy batted away because
right,
the idea fairy is always going to say, well, hey, here's an opportunity. And we have to have the discipline and the focus to say no. Like it could be a great idea, it could be a great opportunity. I have to say no
100%.
because I'm already in a good field.
Absolutely. It's funny you say that though, because I feel like during the 2020 downtime that some of us had, and I had a little bit more time, even though I had a job, I was like, okay, well now I'm incredibly bored. There's not much going on. I started a few companies at the same time,
Yeah.
and some of them flopped and stuff, but then I almost kind of like scaled it back from there. But I was so actionable on things that I would just start making them happen, which was it's a good thing to have happen. Like in terms of not pumping my tires, but I just know from seeing inaction, people talk about things for too long and then it almost goes stale. That's worse than just trying it and making it work. But a couple of those things actually did work. They were working, but just it wasn't really growth and scalable to different levels. So then I found myself pulling back and then figuring out that within those companies, the thing that I was really good at was the marketing piece that we were just chatting about there. And then, like you said, maybe hindsight would have been cool to know and have been thinking about it differently. Like, hey, that's the thing I should be focusing in, not, having a tree company and a
Right.
rental thing and this other stuff going on. They all did well because we had strong marketing, not, because they were the best idea, but we just went out and did the thing ultimately there. Right. So
Knowing what I know about personal brands now, which like I'm still learning
yeah.
about, but like it's like if you could just stay in that one field for a long time,
Yeah,
now everyone knows you as the marketing guy. You've made millions and millions of
100%.
dollars there. Now we can go and take the marketing money, which is fruitful and abundant. We can go and start any philanthropic business that we want.
Yeah,
And
100%.
we're not even really we're starting that business because we feel like we can help people and we can give back to our communities in that way, not because we need it to work, because we want
Absolutely.
to provide that.
Yep. And with that, like success does come giving back. Like I think a lot of that gets overlooked a little bit too in some ways. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, what people actually do with that, and often they are strongly giving back to their communities because that serves more of a purpose ultimately for them within that space and that environment that way. So, Mike, this has been a great chat. I want to be cognizant of the time for both of us here. I know we have schedules to stick to. But what is the best way for folks to get a hold of you? I know you mentioned Instagram as a social media side, and you have a website as well that folks can track you down. Because I'm thinking for individuals out there or businesses that are maybe looking to get their teams, I know something that you're heading towards. We're going to have this on the website too, so listener, you can go and click the links that we have below here if you've gotten this far in.
Sure.
But
Yeah, my thank you for that too. So realmikecarnevale.com on for my website. You can find my socials there. Instagram, Real Mike Carnevale. You can send me a DM. We can connect that way. And my message when it comes to the sales is grow the top end revenue of your company, and then all the other problems will eventually flush itself out. So that's where I'm at on that.
that's awesome. No, I think that's great. If there's anything else that you want to add in here, Mike, or if you're good, I'm
No,
good
I think
here.
we
We
should.
can
I
stay
think we
on
should do
track.
this again. This was good conversation.
100%. Yeah.
Ran out of time here at the end, but let's stay connected down the road, and here to continue to provide value and service. And I'm happy to do so, and I'm happy we connected.
Me too, Mike. This has been great. Thanks so much for making time today.
Absolutely, brother. You have a good one. All right.